FOXSOUL's Black Report. This is a space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi, and on today's report, a new study finds that police violence remains a high concern in the U.S. A Black Lives Matter activist is in critical condition after being shot in the head in London. Gymnast Simone Biles makes history, and a celebrated hip-hop photographer has died.
We're going to show you how you could win a year of free flights. An Illinois state senator wants to protect Black girls and women from hair discrimination. Police say they've arrested a man wanted in connection to 4 murders across 2 states. We have this story, plus the latest in the Tatiana Jefferson police shooting in Texas.
You can definitely sign me up for the free flights. We have all of that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's talk about it.
Tomorrow will mark 1 year since former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin knelt on George Floyd's neck for more than 8 minutes, killing him. Floyd's family joined activists in Minneapolis for a march to mark the date. There were hundreds of people marching in downtown Minneapolis this weekend, right in front of the courthouse where Chauvin was convicted just last month. If you look later on in the video, you can see protesters carrying signs with pictures of Floyd, Philando Castile, and other Black men killed by police. Both Floyd family attorney Ben Crump and Reverend Al Sharpton spoke at the event, calling for U.S. senators to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. The legislation would bring about the most significant changes to policing on the federal level by banning the use of chokeholds and establishing a national database of police misconduct incidents. I wanted to talk to both of you about this 1 year later, and I think for a lot of people, I've realized it doesn't even feel like it's been a year because the trial kept everything so fresh. But 1 year ago, we were watching some of the, around 1 year ago, we were watching some of the biggest protests of our lifetimes, right, that we've lived through, watching them happen worldwide, seeing people, companies, corporations, and we'll get to that, like we didn't expect, speaking out against something, I think, on a level that a lot of people had not actually experienced before. And so, where are you all? What do you remember about that space?
What I remember is we had just not too long ago started FOXSOUL's Black Report. So this is one of the cases that, in one of the incidents that came up, we were just blown away. And when I say that, because we've known this has happened before. We've probably seen things similar to this, but it was something about that moment that's going to be a year ago tomorrow that changed the world. And we didn't know how to react because we could not believe this officer was kneeling on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes, and he was there, and like he had checked out. He had no reaction, no response. So we were saying to ourselves, how can we survive in this country? How can we survive knowing if this can happen in broad daylight in front of people that are filming it, right? And speaking of that, Rising Up here at the local Fox 11, they're doing a program starting today all week long. They're going to talk to a lot of people, including myself, where we're going to talk about the trial. We filmed this before the trial, not knowing the outcome, but it's going to be something powerful that people can watch at foxla.com. But yeah, it was life-changing, and I had to have a long conversation with my son about what he saw. He still talks about it.
He still talks about it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Aaron Day at Fox LA. It is a magically produced piece, a 5 episode series. And I think everyone should take a look at that. I'm sorry, Dave.
No, it's fine. Brooke, it's hard for me to remember exactly where I was a year ago mentally, but I just know right now, I think we as Black people, we are just tired. We are tired. We are exhausted because, since George Floyd's death, 223 Black people have died at the hands of police just in this last year. So when you think about 223 Black lives lost at the hands of police. The way that the protests went down this past year were monumental. And I just want to thank, every person, Black, white, Asian, it doesn't even matter, for choosing to be on the right side of history, for marching with us, for protesting with us, for putting up your Black screens and, changing your, how we were putting up everything Black on our Instagrams and things like that, and choosing to join the fight with us, because it is because of everyone, doesn't even matter if you're Black or white, joining us. You guys made us have, I don't know if this is called justice. We don't like to call it justice, but may the legacy of George Floyd live on. But I mean, it was just because everyone decided to join in the fight with us. And I just want to say thank you to everyone because we needed that at this moment.
What about you, bro?
Before we move on, I want to bring our soulmates into this conversation because you guys are always here commenting with us, and I would love to know how you all at home. And please, especially if you're watching on YouTube right now, post your comments. How do you feel? Here we are 1 year later. What changes have you seen? What needs to be done? And again, I really just would like to know, how do you feel overall?
All right, moving on. President Joe Biden will host the family of the George Floyd at the White House Tuesday as his administration gears up to mark the 1 year anniversary of Floyd's death. In her daily briefing Friday, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki declined to offer additional details on how Biden planned to mark the anniversary, the Associated Press reported. On Capitol Hill, Democrats have hoped to use the incident to pass sweeping federal criminal justice reforms, including a national ban on chokeholds and ending qualified immunity for police officers. Team Biden had hoped to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act by the 1 year anniversary, something which allies now say is unlikely as the legislation is currently stalled. If we think about before President Joe Biden became president, how he visited the family back in June, something that we didn't get from the president during that time. Trump did not even bother with that. But we think about how he's been communicating with the family throughout this and how he's been showing his support and how he understands what happened that day was not right. So, and I really think that helped him out in the election as well, if you think about that, because he stepped forward saying, look, before I even have you go ahead and punch my ticket, this is something that I stand for. We're going to stand on this side and say what happened was not right. But what's going to happen? Is that going to be signed by tomorrow? It doesn't look like it is, so but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to be signed by tomorrow either, Romeo. But what I was thinking, with this meeting happening, like you said, Biden has been working really closely with the George Floyd's family. I just hope that when they have, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on in the show, but I hope that when Biden meets with the family, that they can tell him their concerns of the heart. They can really tell him this is the moment to get it all out, lay it all out on the table, and actually say all of these different bills and laws and reforms in George Floyd's name. Do we like them? Do we think that they're going to work? Do we think that this is going to bring change? So I think this is going to be a great moment for them to say, you know what, Joe Biden, thank you for this meeting. Let me tell you what we, as the Black community, really, truly need, because not everybody gets this opportunity. So I'm hoping that, like I said, they just get the opportunity to really tell him their desires of the heart.
And I wonder, because remember at the very beginning of the president's term, it was give him time. And there were also a lot of people who were saying, you need to get on it, get going, make some of these, bring some of these promises to fruition. And I wonder now where those people lie. Do you know what I mean? If there's still a heavy give him time, if the people who were saying, you need to hurry up, if they feel like they've seen how the process works and that's changed their mind, or if they feel even stronger, True. It's interesting.
All right, guys. So a year after George Floyd's murder at the hands of a white police officer that has sparked global protests and a racial reckoning, majority of Americans say racism and police violence are serious problems facing the nation. Yet relatively few believe attention the past year or so, to the issues has led to positive change. A poll from the Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs Research shows that Americans are more likely now versus before Floyd's death to say that police violence is a serious problem. And about half think that police who caused harm on the job are treated too leniently by the justice system. The poll also found that 6 in 10 Americans say racism in the United States is a very or extremely serious problem. It's similar to the percentage that said the same thing a year ago. Just to dive a little bit more into those 6 out of 10 Americans. So they also say that after Derek Chauvin was convicted of George Floyd's murder, they say that they don't feel like anything has changed and their level of confidence in the criminal system has not changed. But there's also a 1/3 percentage who says that their confidence has increased. I just want to say here that I feel like as long as these police officers, as long as they're not going, the money is not going to come out of their. Let me go back. As long as the settlements are going to be just handed out to these families, 2 million, 10 million, whatever amount of millions, and the money is not coming out of their personal pockets, they're always going to feel like they're above the law. entitled, and they're not going to have a true love for Black lives. And so, like I said, these polls are great, but at the end of the day, what is this changing? When are we going to have the day where these police officers are held accountable? The money comes out of their pockets, and they're personally affected for killing Black people.
Yeah. And if you ask Black Americans, like you said, numbers never lie. 72% of Black Americans say police shooting for us Black and brown people has gotten worse. So you would think after something like this that there would be some kind of change, there would be some kind of new training set up. I feel like they're still out there running wild with a gun and a badge doing what they want to do. We see it happen over and over again. So these numbers pretty much show the truth. They're like, look, do we feel like things are getting better? No.
In international news, an activist and political leader is recovering in London after being shot in the head near a house party. Police say 27-year-old Sasha Johnson was taken to a hospital in critical condition. She had an operation and is recovering. Witnesses say she had received numerous death threats before the shooting. London police say there is nothing to suggest this was a targeted attack, but they do say the investigation is in the early stages. So those two accounts conflicting there. Parliament member Diane Abbott actually tweeted about Johnson saying nobody should have to potentially pay with their life because they stood up for racial justice. Again, police saying they don't feel at all at this moment in the investigation that this was a targeted attack, that this had anything to do with her activism. But obviously, you see politicians who feel the opposite. We are absolutely going to be following this story and watching this story and also thinking about this young woman who, regardless, she's dealing with a gunshot wound in her head. And so we want her to be okay.
That is something I feared all across the board, not just there, but in our country as well. We have people standing up for what's right, out there marching for what's right, utilizing their freedom. That's my fear, that something like this will happen. So I'm definitely sending prayers to her and her family.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, this is someone, she's a young mother. Her child is at home, not knowing how this is going to turn out, first things first. But second, a good friend of hers says that, you guys touched on this a little bit, but her good friend says that as far as I'm aware, this incident is more related to rival gangs as opposed to her activism. So I'm curious, like you said, Brooke, to see how this turns out and we can find out exactly what happened. But rival gangs, her activism, all of it tying in together, it's just a lot. I don't know how to process it just yet. So hopefully we can give you guys updates as soon as we know anything going on with this case for sure.
Definitely. Well, police have arrested several people during protests in Elizabeth City, North Carolina last week, including 2 journalists who were covering a demonstration the day after a district attorney cleared sheriff's deputies in the shooting death of Andrew Brown Jr. The 2 journalists who were arrested work for the USA Today network, according to news outlets. Elizabeth City Police Chief Eddie Buffalo did not immediately return a phone call and email from the Associated Press seeking comment on the incident. Demonstrators had gathered to protest the prosecutor's decision that sheriff's deputies were justified in fatally shooting Brown in April because the black man struck a deputy with his car and nearly ran him over while ignoring commands to show his hands and get out of the vehicle. The news leader reported that it's not clear whether either of the journalists will be charged. I'm hearing right now that they're not going to be charged. I hope it stays that way. So apparently they were trying to be charged with a misdemeanor there for holding up traffic. But they went on to say they were standing at a crossroad on the corner and on the sidewalk. They were not holding up traffic due to this. And, Elizabeth City, it's known for, it's called, the change is called the Harbor of Healing. Now they're calling that city the Harbor of, let me make sure I have my notes right here. Yeah, it's called the Harbor of Healing. It was called the Harbor of Hospitality. Now it's called the Harbor of Healing because that city has truly been affected by this, and the rest of the country has been affected as well. Again, we see this happen over and over again. We're talking about coming up on the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd and what happened on that day, yet we see something like this, and the officers won't be charged.
Also, I think that sometimes the story ends when it's, hey, there was some confusion, nobody's going to be charged, all is well. But the trauma of being detained, being arrested, being afraid that you're going to be arrested while simply doing your job, I think, that's something that nobody should have to go through. Nobody, I'm sorry, I keep bumping my microphone here, that nobody should have to go through, that nobody wants to go through while simply trying to work. The fact of the matter is journalists have to be there to cover these events. We are the eyes and ears for the rest of the public. And so I think it's increasingly frustrating for a lot of media organizations when they are treated as if they have to follow the exact same rules, as if they aren't there to cover both the police and protester activity and bystanders and and everyone.
And if you're peacefully protesting, right? Imagine if you're out there doing that. You're saying if they're going to arrest a journalist, Imagine what that might do to me.
Right.
Yeah.